Flix returns home to reconnect with family, but what happens during their fuels giving?
How you get so big getting food of this kind?
Hello and welcome into my spoiler review of this week's episode of Star Wars Resistance From Beneath. Once again, I was not able to capture screenshots, so I'm sorry for those of you who might like to see the things that I'm talking about as I talk about them, but we're going to carry on and do a review of this episode. I was getting massive Zillo Beast vibes from this episode. Those of you who've watched Star Wars The Clone Wars know what I'm talking about. If you have not gotten around to watching that series yet, I highly recommend it, but there was an episode where they were on a planet with a bunch of Dougs, and the Zillo Beast woke up because they were drilling for fuel, and it became this whole, like, Godzilla thing. This felt a lot like that. It didn't come to the point where they tried to capture the rock dragon and that sort of thing, but it was kind of fun to see another monster-y type episode. This season of Resistance is kind of literally turned into a Monster of the Week type of show. It was cool seeing yet another kind of creature out there in wild space, and like Zillo and like the Jacuz from previous week, it was really cool to see another creature that is immune to laser fire, that this seems to be a very common thing when you go out into the deeper reaches of space. But what I really liked about this episode is I love seeing more with the characters we've come to know and love on the Colossus. I love seeing more with Flix and Orka. I know there were a lot of people in the show that was really hoping that we would very quickly get caught up in The Last Jedi, see what's going on with the Resistance, see what's going on with the First Order, but this show has really kept it close to the characters, and with it being the final season of Resistance, I think we would be at a loss if we didn't get to spend time with these characters that we've come to know and love. And certainly Flix and Orka are amazingly special characters to this show. They're characters that we got to know more in the first season, and to me it's kind of odd that we haven't seen them more in this season. You know, they sell spare parts and stuff. You would think they would know how it works. It'd be nice to see them doing some repair work on the Colossus, and maybe they have been. But it makes a lot of sense to kind of have them be involved with a fuel pickup, especially with it being Flix's family. We did get reference to Flix and Orka visiting Flix's family in the one episode where Kaz has to take over the shop, and there was the guy from the First Order who was trying to buy the drill thing, ironically enough. To kind of get a follow-up on that thing that was not really teased, but kind of teased in the first season is cool. There's been a lot of talk in this show as to whether or not Flix and Orka are super BFF partners or partners. This episode probably will not answer that question enough for a lot of people, and that's perfectly valid. There is a lot of very specific dialogue. Orka does specifically says that he loves Flix, though it's not really clear the context for the comment. There is a point where one of Flix's cousins refers to Orka as a great catch that is decidedly less open to interpretation, as a phrase at least in English. But beyond that, I really like seeing more from Flix's past as well as just this idea that he wanted to be a cantina singer at one point. He has this very kind of awkward homecoming with his family that would be very relatable to a lot of people, right? You have the family where they've had the family business, whether it's drilling or something mechanical or some kind of trade job or just any kind of job where it's been a single business in the family for any amount of time, to then have the one family member that wants to go off and do his own thing and not be a part of the family business. I mean, that's a story we've seen in anything. You know, it could be something like art, or it could be the movie Rudy. That's something that I think a lot of people can relate to, you know, being the black sheep of the family. You get the idea that there was a lot of drama that led up to this point. You know, Flix obviously has issues with his family. The cousins say, hey, you know, you think you're Mr. Perfect, you want to come back here to our backwards planet. And Flix even says that he didn't leave on good terms. So this was very much an episode about family reconciliation, and this talks a lot about what I was talking about last week with the type of themes on this show. I know a lot of people talk about Rebels, and one of the things they really liked about Rebels is that it's a found family show, and that is really amazing, and that is absolutely something that Rebels is about. I think Resistance has that found family to a degree. Certainly the way the Resistance crew works together is that way, but it also seems to be a show that has far more biological family reconciliation. You see Captain Doza and Torra have this healthy relationship. We've seen Kaz's dad in the show now. We have Flix going back and reconnecting with his family. So even though you have all of these characters that have found themselves as friends, we're seeing more and more themes of characters getting to know their extended families better and coming to terms with that. And that's certainly a bigger theme in Star Wars anyway. When you have, the first 6 films were about the Skywalker family. You have 9 closing the Skywalker saga. It's nice to see these themes of family kind of permeate into other series as well. I also like Flix and Orka's different takes on family. You have Orka, who's very much of course they'll take you back. Your family, you always take family back. Orka commands Flix's cousins, like, what's wrong with you? Why would you not help Flix? Flix is your family. He has this very strong sense where you have Flix, who is the person who has been scorned by his family, hurt by his family, feeling like the outcast of his family. And it gives you this insight, too, in what Flix and Orka can see in each other. Flix could be attracted to this person who believes so strongly in family when he never had that, and that can create a dynamic between the two of them. And so this to me was a really good character study and 2 characters that deserve more time and attention on the show, and I was really happy that they got it. As far as the actual plot of the episode itself, it reminded me thematically a little bit about what was going on in The Hunt with fighting the Jakkus, that you have this thing that is usually portrayed as bad in Star Wars, such as hunting, but you need to have a hunt to convey the story that you're trying to convey and to show the survival of the Colossus characters. You have that again here. Usually, drilling in Star Wars is conveyed as bad. You go right back to the Zillo Beast episode. You go through any number of Star Wars books, you have the Empire overtaking minerals from planets, just sucking planets dry to create the amount of stuff that they need to build either of the Death Stars. So again, you have this thing that is thematically bad in Star Wars. Even something where you have fuel in Solo: A Star Wars Story, you get the fuel from the planet of Kessel, which Kessel is considered a bad planet. But you have this problem of the Colossus needs fuel, right? You can't fight against the First Order if you can't power your ships to get to the First Order. We have once again hit this issue where we have something that is codified as wrong in Star Wars. So how do we handle it? Well, Flix didn't necessarily leave his family because he's against drilling. Maybe he did. We don't really know. We know that he had dreams of being a cantina singer. But Flix's issue with what his family is doing is not the drilling, it's the deep core drilling. And the reason why deep core drilling is bad is because it might wake up the rock dragon things. But when they talk about the planet on the whole, this is not a, Pandora from Avatar type world. There are no pristine ecosystems. There are no indigenous people on the planet that are being hurt by the miners. This planet is barren. Now, maybe it became barren because of drilling or resource taking, but we are expressly told many times in the episode that there is no one on the planet except for Flix's family, and as we come to find out, the rock dragons. So them drilling on the planet is not necessarily a problem because any damage they do to the planet isn't really hurting anyone. The pollution is not going to leave the planet and go to a different planet because that's not how outer space works. Now, they do make a comment that the drilling is causing a problem. As they arrive, the crew in the ship notes, Flix notes that the storms are getting worse than they ever have before. This could be connected as well to the deep core drilling as opposed to just the drilling. There's definitely the idea, Flix says, if my uncle's here, he'll help us, but because the uncle retired, there's the idea you had the responsible older person who ran the refinery, and then you have the younger upstart who doesn't care about rules and tradition, and so he's running the refinery all wrong and doing the things that they're not supposed to do. You also kind of have this play of rock dragons are a myth versus them being real, and you can draw your own corollary conclusions about what claiming that you shouldn't do a thing because of a thing that a lot of people think is a myth but isn't a myth. There's a corollary there. But it's an interesting corollary because there's really no actual negative repercussions for messing up this world other than the rock dragons, who seem to be really happy in their rocks.
A delicious-looking limestone rock. Nice bouquet. Must be a real vintage year.
This was a really long-winded thing, and I apologize, but it's an interesting thing what the show is trying to do, be it with hunting, be it with drilling, be it with understanding Tam's reasons for joining the First Order. This show is almost specifically picking things that have been codified as this or that, right or wrong within Star Wars, but then showing the desperate situations that people might find themselves in where they need the thing that they're not supposed to need, and showing how much more complex things can be at an individual level. And that's just something that I find interesting. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they go down, Flix's cousin gets captured by the rock dragon. That is a particularly interesting scene to me. The rock dragon does eventually try to eat the cousin, but the way he's like slowly dragged down the tunnel, I kind of was feeling like that was almost a trap. We learned that the rock dragons can only see with movement, and so I think that the rock dragon was taking the cousin to like lure the other people into the cave so like the dragon could see them move and then like catch them. But that's just my own kind of inference. I did feel very Jurassic Parky, both the way that the rock dragons were kind of working together and the way that they could only see you because their vision is based on movement.
Nobody move a muscle.
At the end of the episode, the cousin just closes the rock dragons back in. That is not presented as a bad action, but rather a good one. And then he just promises to not deep core drill anymore. So I don't think we're left to think that the dragons are negatively trapped down there, but that rather they are just simply happier. And it's just kind of an interesting conclusion that you can take resources from a planet as long as you don't take too much or in the wrong way. I also think it's funny when everybody gets back to the surface, Flix's cousin says that the dragon was just trying to protect his kin, and we're going to leave the dragons alone now because you take care of family. I don't know that we necessarily know that the dragons were just trying to take care of their kin. I don't know any reason why we would think that's not what was happening, but there was we never saw like eggs, right? We never saw a mama dragon protecting a nest or anything. We don't really know anything about how these dragons work, but I think that line in there was specifically to be like Flix's cousin saying, I will take care of my kin by giving them fuel in the same way the rock dragon is taking care of the other rock dragons. I think there was supposed to be a little bit of a corollary there. Just to talk about a couple other characters for a second, I really like seeing Kaz and Torra out on missions. I really like seeing Kaz as an extension of Yeager and Torra as an extension of her father, that Doza and Yeager are really kind of running this station, and then Kaz and Torra have these great positions of responsibility. Really seeing them rise as heroes in the show is pretty awesome. The final thing I really have to say about the episode is something I want to address, and I'm worrying that I'm becoming a bit of a broken record. I'm worrying that I'm sounding a little bit like one of those Disney shills that everybody likes to complain about. But just based off of comments I see on Twitter, sometimes comments left on the videos, and I'm not shading anyone there. I love reading your guys' comments, agree or disagree on the episode, but it's just a common narrative is all I'm trying to say, that people want to see the show get going more, doing more. But to me, the episodes like we get this week are very, very important. It's not that there's only one season left, so they better give us plot every single time, dang it. I think it would be a tragedy if this show ended and we never got moments with the characters. This is so common in final seasons of TV shows, where they take time to go away from the major plot to really resolve things with characters. And this was the episode where we get, Flix's relationship with his family more resolved. That is an important thing for this side character. And it's important that little moments like that don't get lost in the bigger point of a show like this. I think that it kind of becomes a grass is greener on the other side thing, that anytime you have a show that's taking its time to show you character moments, people complain that it's not doing the bigger story enough. But then on the flip side, when you have a show that is all plot, all like constant, twist in the story, people then complain that the characters aren't developed. And that even happened in this show. People are saying Kaz do this or do that, but not feeling like his character is growing enough. Well, it's episodes like this that help characters grow. And I know that Kylo in the trailer has a lot of people excited. I know that we can clearly see in the timeline that we are, where we've hit in The Last Jedi, and people are pointing out that there's only so much time there within the movie, and people want to see all of that. But I think it's important to remember story structure. This is the nature of the beast when dealing with a show that's coming out that's going to tie into a movie. I do not think we're going to see anything that's going to be super, super tied into The Last Jedi until the mid-season finale. And then when we get this mid-season finale, we will get the Rise of Skywalker, and then on the other side of the Rise of Skywalker, we will get what's really going on, and we'll get more of what people want to see. Now, that doesn't mean we won't see the First Order anymore until then, or anything like that, but I just think it's important to remember that they are going to plan something big for the mid-season finale, and what's going to top, you know, Kylo showing up in this show. I think that right now it feels like it's taking forever to get there because we're waiting week by week and we're anticipating this movie. If you go back and watch the show later, it's just not gonna feel like it's taking forever to get there, and that people are gonna be really glad these episodes are there. You know, to be so sad that the show is ending, but then mad that we're getting character moments, I don't know, I've watched too many series end, and I've watched too many series end too soon before I get these moments with these characters for me to take what we're getting now for granted. Yeah, I'm excited to see the First Order, but I think it's also important to note that if you look at the material that's being released as a lead up to the Rise of Skywalker, yeah, you know, you had the Age of Republic villains comics, but those were largely about well before Force Awakens even. Most of what's getting released right now is Resistance-based stuff. You have Resistance Reborn, which is about the good guys. You have Spark of Resistance, which is about the good guys. You have your Choose Your Destiny book that's largely about the good guys. We're not seeing what the First Order is up to right now, and I think that's intentional. Because heroes are open, honest characters. We know what they're doing. It's not going to spoil a lot for us to see what they're up to in between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. But to show us what the First Order is up to now in between the two movies is going to tip their hand at what goes on at the beginning of Rise of Skywalker. If we know everything that's going on in the First Order right now, then we know how the Rise of Skywalker starts. And that's probably not a bad thing, but that's not the decision the creatives want to make. It's cool if you don't agree with the decision to spend more time on characters. It's cool if you don't agree with the decision to show less of the First Order. You're entitled to that opinion. But to expect that to change week by week is just going to hinder your ability to enjoy the episodes up until that point. We are already on episode 6. It's not going to take much longer. And I'm personally just really excited for what we get out of these episodes week by week. Maybe that makes me a shill. I'm still waiting on the Disney money to come in the mail, but I'm excited. I like what we're getting. I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts, and I'm confident that the second half of the season is going to be completely bonkers. But that's it for what I have this week and my thoughts on this week's episode. Please leave me a comment below letting me know what you thought of the episode. Follow us on all of the socials. I love to interact with you guys there. And until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.